Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Mr. Carter.
Shabbat shalom.
All right.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. We're going to go ahead and get the class started, all right, and we're going to face the east, and I'm going to ask the chief's officer over this way, okay? I always say the east this way, so what we're going to do is we're going to blow the shofar 7 times, and we're going to take it from there, all right? Cool, let's try this 4 more times.
One more. That was 6. Hallelujah.
Okay, Mr. Carter, we're going to stay standing, and we're going to continue off what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, all right? And I'm going to explain to everybody what we're actually doing. Okay, so my brother, Yashra'al's permission, I would like for his Yashra'al to actually bring us into prayer. And I'm going to explain everything after class today.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
I'm coming from Tel Aviv.
Okay? Book of Psalms.
Yes, book of Psalms 1-5. Give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear. In the morning, O Lord, in the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a Elohim that has pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell in thee. Foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak deceit. Thou Yahuwah will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship before the holy temple. Lead me, O Yahuwah, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. And that is the end of what we made. Hallelujah.
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 Okay, what we're going to be doing today is actually piggybacking off of what we've been doing for the last like 3 weeks now, right? Which is going over the book of Ezekiel, going to Ezekiel, the 16th chapter. Right, Ezekiel, the 16th chapter. And just to show how things are actually flowing in the Ruach, we had our chief officer, Rabbi Ezekiel. He did a show last week, and I pray that everybody got a chance to watch it over again, okay, because it was a very good lesson talking about basically the will of Yahuwah. We talked about sacrificing. It's better to obey than to sacrificing, to sacrifice, and what was actually going on during and after the time of the Messiah with the Pharisees. So we did a very good job on that. And actually, if you pay very close attention to the video or the show, the class that he did last week, that's also talking about a covenant. Everything is talking about a covenant and a marriage, as I always say, from beginning to end. And what we're going to do, and this is going to be like part of the ceremony from here on out. What we're going to be doing is reciting the Shema. And anybody know what the Shema is? Yeah, exactly. It's a prayer, but it's a certain type of prayer. Okay, it's a certain type of prayer, and we're just going to go over it in English today, and the next week, what we could probably do is go over it in Greek or Hebrew. Because as we already know, once things are said and done in Hebrew, it takes on a whole different fashion versus the English. So, if the Mr. Kai can go to the book of the book of Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, I'm going to read verses 4 through 9, which is actually the Shema. Anybody have their paper? Oh, hallelujah. Let's see some points. She has hers. Okay, hallelujah. What the Shema is, it's actually it's an agreement to a wedding ceremony. Okay? It's an agreement to the wedding ceremony. And this is what's been told to the nation of Yashra'al. It says, "Here, Yashra'al, Yahuwah, our Elohim, is one. Blessed be the name, his glorious kingdom, for this age and the future." Now, I'm just going through this, what we call transliterate. Okay, so it might be a little bit different in your books in the book of Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, verses 4 through 9, but with the verbs and all those things here. The next one says that you shall love your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and they will be the words, these that I command you today upon your heart. You shall teach them, okay, which is the Shema, the Torah, to your sons. And you shall speak of them when you sit down or when you sit in your house, and in your walking, in the way and in your lying down, and in your rising up, and you shall bind them for a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon your doorposts, because you have this is right?
Yes,
You have one. Okay, absolutely. Okay, so these things are supposed to be forever in front of us, on your doorposts and on your gates. All right. So again, the Shema is very, very important because again, this is now like your acknowledgement that you agree to abide by all of the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Father. All of them. All right. There's no deviating. I keep saying that. Now, what I want to do now is further along with the Shema and go to the book of Exodus, the 20th chapter. Just want everybody to know how serious this ketubah is, and we're going to get into a little bit later on what's been actually happening within the last 3 weeks here in the congregation. The book of Exodus, or the book of Shemot, the 20th chapter, verse 1. And Yahuwah spoke all these words, saying, to the nation of Yashra'al now, I am Yahuwah, thy mighty one, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt. So we know that Yahuwah is our Redeemer, and he used Yashra'al HaMashiach to be that mediator. So again, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Now, being that this was done, this is what we're supposed to do now. We're not supposed to have any other Elohims before Yahuwah. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven or shamayim above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Again, there's terms and conditions to marriage. For thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahuwah, thy Elohim, is the jealous Elohim, visiting, again, that word visiting is very important, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy now unto them that love me and keep my commandments. All right? Keep my commandments. Verse 7. And thou shalt not take the name of Yahuwah thy Elohim in vain. And that word name means exactly that. The word name. But the word name also shows the character of the mighty one that you're serving. All right, so the name it literally means a literal name. That also means that we have to be careful of our steps and how we walk in Torah. So again, thou shalt not take the name Yahuwah thy Elohim in vain, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless. but that taketh his name in vain. Now, this is where it gets very particular. It says to remember the Shabbat day to keep it set apart. The instructions are, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. However, but the 7th day is the Shabbat of Yahuwah thy Elohim. In it thou shalt do no or any work, nor shall thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor the stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days Yahuwah thy Elohim made Shamayim, or heaven and earth, the rocks, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore Yahuwah blessed the Shabbat and set it apart. Verse 12. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahuwah thy Elohim giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill or murder, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor. Verse 18. And all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpet and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood far off. Now, when we begin to really understand, all right, the set apart estate of Yahuwah, and he's given us these instructions here on how to conduct ourselves, we must pay very, very close attention to them, okay? Because when we begin to recite the Shema, we say that we understand the Torah. This now puts you in a different category than everybody else. You're now going to be held responsible for every single thing that you're doing. Everything. And we're going to get into that a little bit later on, all right? Now, like I do in all the shows that I do, and I'm going to continue to do this, we must make sure that we give all esteem and honor to the Father of Yahuwah for sending his ultimate love gift, Yashra'al Mashiach, who was the atoning sacrifice of the nation of Yashra'al. Now, we're going to piggyback off what we did 2 weeks ago in Ezekiel 16th chapter. So let's go to that. I just want to read that a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and get into the lesson. That's Ezekiel the 16th chapter. We're going to show, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that we all need vows here. We're going to show that in Scripture. Okay, I'm going to start at verse 1. This is Ezekiel the 16th chapter, or Yashra'al the 16th chapter, verse 1. Again, the word of Yahuwah came into me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, Thus saith Yahuwah, thy Elohim unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity is of the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, and thy mother an Hittite. And as for thy nativity in the day that thou was born, thy navel was not cut. We talked about that word cut. That word cut actually means a covenant, which is the Hebrew word, what? The word for cut is what in Hebrew? Greet. Exactly, the word greet. Neither was I washed in water to supple thee, and thou was not salted at all, nor swaddled at all. So we talked about, yes. So we talked about the washing of the water. We talked about that in descriptive detail. We went into the book of Yehukanan, the 4th chapter. We talked about the woman at the well. We talked about the importance of living water versus stagnant water. And so we did all of that. Now what we want to talk about is the salt covenant. All right? The salt covenant. Because in Ezekiel, the 16th chapter, it talked about when the groom found the bride, he found her in a certain position. And the position that he found her in now was a position of filth. She was not under any commitment with any other nation. And what she had actually did now was that she had actually broken the laws that was given to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So she found herself in a condition, but she was still obligated to follow these laws here. So it said that she was not salted. Now, this is how we want to set the stage, Mishpachah. Covenants, all right? Covenants are very, very important. Covenants are very serious, even though we take them very lightly. Yahuwah treats covenants as binding and forever. Binding and forever. When the Father of Yahuwah makes a covenant with his people Yashra'al, he doesn't change his mind. I'm just trying to show how serious this is now. He doesn't change his mind. Now, did you know that the Father of Yahuwah is also bound by a covenant? Yahuwah is bound by a covenant. He made a covenant with the nation of Yashra'al, and he's bound by that covenant. He can't break the covenant that he made with his people. Let's prove that. Let's go to the book of Yashra'al, the book of Joshua, the 21st chapter. We've gone over the scripture before, but I just really need for it to sink in. Not saying that it's not sinking in, but I just want us to also just to be really mindful of what is actually happening here. Okay, the book of Joshua, the 21st chapter. And I'm going to read my favorite, this is one of my favorites here. I'm going to read from 43 to 45. And Yahuwah, okay, listen to this. And Yahuwah gave into Yashra'al all the land which he swore to give to their fathers. So we have now terms and conditions of the marriage. And we see that the Father of Yahuwah actually made a covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And he's fulfilling this covenant because he gave the land that was promised to the nation, that he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we see now the fruition of this coming to pass. And Yahuwah gave into Yashra'al all the land which he gave to their fathers, and they possessed it and dwelt therein. Verse 24. And Yahuwah gave them rest round about, according to all that he swore to our or their fathers, and there stood not a man of all of Yashra'al's enemies before them. Yahuwah delivered all their enemies into their hands. Verse 45. They fell not aught of any good thing which Yahuwah has spoken to the house of Yashra'al, all came to pass. All of it. He fulfilled all of the terms of the agreements to the covenant that he made with us, the nation of Yashra'al. Now again, covenants are very serious. Now, the groom gave himself totally to the bride, meaning his life. His life now. His only request is that we surrender ourselves totally in returning to the laws, statutes, and commandments. So I'm going to say it again. The groom gave himself totally to the bride, meaning his life. So in return now, his only request now is that you totally submit to the laws, statutes, and commandments, because he did his part by killing all of the mighty ones of Egypt, the 10 plagues, bringing us out of Egypt during the Jubilee year, making a covenant with the nation of Yashra'al. So in return, we must make sure that we understand the laws, statutes, and commandments. We're going to go to the book of Yehukanah, or the book of John, the 19th chapter. We're going to prove everything. The 19th chapter. Chapter, we're going to start at verse just with 39. Excuse me, I'm going to start at 29. Let's see here. Actually, I'm going to start at verse 28. And everybody knows the story. After this, the Messiah, knowing that all things were now accomplished. All things were now accomplished, and what was accomplished now is that he knew that he had to be that atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al. We know what happened at the Garden of Gethsemane. He went and he prayed to the Father to be the Father's will to take the cup away from him. But we know at the end that the Father said that you must take the cup for the woman. So he says something very important here. After this, the Messiah, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, said, I thirst. Now after this, there was a vessel full of vinegar, and they filled the sponge with vinegar, and put it upon it hyssop, and put it to his mouth. And when the Messiah therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up his Pentecost spirit. Now, looking at parallels, and we see this certain vessel full of vinegar being given to the groom, the Messiah, taking on the sins of the adulterous woman, the nation of Yashra'al. What does this remind you of? Because again, all scriptures must link up. Because he has to fulfill prophecy. If the Messiah is not fulfilling prophecy, he's not the one that was promised to come. And we're still dead in our sins. So what we just read from verses 28 down to 30, where he now gives up the Pentecost spirit. This bowl of vinegar, these bitter waters now, was actually given to the woman, okay, if she committed adultery. Right? And if the woman was guilty of the charge, it talked about her belly would swell, she would rot, her thighs would rot, and all these things like that, so she could become a disgrace to the nation because she committed adultery. So the crime and the penalty for adultery is very severe. But we have now the groom, okay, taking the bitter waters for the bride, taking on the sins of her. But remember now, the Messiah didn't rot. He did not rot, meaning now that there was no guile found in the Messiah. So he was that perfect atoning sacrifice for the nation of Yashra'al, now redeeming the bride, bringing the bride now back into covenant relationship with the Father. It all has to fit. Remember it talks about if the woman had committed adultery, the man then brings his Isha now to the courts, to the high priest. She uncovers her head and she drinks this drink. Because he can't actually find the guilty party who she might have been committing adultery with. But the priesthood, they knew how to make this concoction now, where it's like the truth serum. It's like the truth serum. So what's going to happen now, all these things are going to now begin to transpire. But what I wanted to capitalize now on is the word finish. Because the Messiah said that it is finished. If we go now to the Strong's number in the Greek, 50-55. Okay, because it's all here. It is definitely all here. If somebody has it before me, by all means, yeah, looking at the word, it is finished. It is the Greek number 50. Because we need to know exactly what it is that the Messiah is saying when he said, it is finished. Let me just get it right quick here. Yashra'al, what were you saying?
John 20, right?
Right, yeah, Teleo, right? Teleo, right? Okay, let me just get it right quick. Let's see how this ties in. 50-55. It means to complete, to execute, to conclude, to discharge a debt. And that's what I want everybody to capitalize on. To discharge a debt. When the Messiah died and resurrected, bringing the bride back into covenant relationship now with the Father, he is now, okay, he's discharging a debt. And that debt now was that, being that the bride committed adultery by serving all of these other mighty ones, that we were told not to do, because we just went to the book of Ezekiel, the 20th chapter, when we read the 10 Devarim, that we're not supposed to have any other Elohims before the Father. Now, being that we all did this, he's now discharging the debt, because he's now saying it is finished. He completed what was told to him to do by the Father, because at one point he said, listen, I don't even want to take the cup, looking at how severe the sins are of the bride. Now, to discharge a debt, to accomplish, to make an end, to expire, to fill up, to finish, to go over, to pay, or to perform. Now, the next one that also gives us a nice definition to this word, TiVo, is 50-56. We have from a primary, to set out, to point, a goal, to point, to aim as a limit, the conclusion, or the act or state of termination, the result, the ultimate. And then it goes on to some other little words here. But I just wanted to bring out, making sure that when we read the scriptures, all right, again, you're going to need a strong concordance, you're going to need a good lexicon to give us the best understanding of the scriptures as possible. Now, the death and resurrection of the groom is actually now an invitation to an everlasting covenant with the Father Yahuwah. Listen again. With the death and resurrection of the Messiah, he's actually telling you now, I want to invite you now to an everlasting covenant with the Father as I am with the Father. Because remember now, they had asked the Messiah, show us the Father. How can you say, show me the Father, when I've been with you all this time? If you have seen me, you have seen the Father, because the Father and I are one. The same way it's supposed to be now in your marriages. When I see you, I'm supposed to see your Ish. When I see your Ish, I'm supposed to see your Isha, because you're now in one accord. And this is what we're talking about now with community living, which is going to be the next step into understanding the Torah. I'm still real big on this thing about application. I'm not impressed about how many scriptures a brother or sister might know. That does nothing for me. It's going to be based upon application, because things are getting real serious here. Brother Yahuwah's been sending out a whole lot of information. Brother Zakaria, who's been sending out a lot of information, and everybody should be aware that times are getting real critical. And this is the reason why the Feast of Sukkot is going to be so important, because it's going to show us now how to actually live together, to have all things in common. We don't really have as much time as we think, because no brother in this congregation or sister in this congregation can show me anywhere in the scriptures where tomorrow is promised to you. And being that it's not promised to you, you must make sure that every day you put your best foot forward in making sure that you follow these laws, statutes, and commandments. It's not promised. Now, I asked a couple of weeks ago, what is actually the Bible or the Torah? And I got a lot of different answers, and none of them were wrong. But what I like to do is that if anybody was to ask me, well, what is Torah? I tell them that this is a study book of application. All right? This is a study book of application. Because the scripture says that the nation of Yashra'al, you're ever learning, but never able to come to the full understanding of the scripture. It's because the full understanding of the scripture is application. All application. Now, I talked about the death and resurrection of the groom is an invitation to enter into an everlasting covenant with the Father Yahuwah. And let's prove that. Let's go to the book of Matthew, Yahu, the 11th chapter, verses 28 to 30. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep beating this whole thing about ketubahs, responsibilities, covenants, immersions, the feast days. That's my gospel, or my good news to the nation of Yashra'al, that these things are very, very important. The book of Matthew, or the book of Matthew, the 11th chapter, verses 28 to 30. It says, remember now, the death and resurrection of the groom is an invitation now to enter into an everlasting covenant with Yahuwah. Yahusha, who is in one consent with the Father Yahuwah, says, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Rob Aloof talked about last week Hebrew idioms. Right? Hebrew idioms. And the way that you read the scriptures, like I always say, you can't read this like you read any other book. And we're going to show that today. And Rob Aloof, he brought out a very good point about Hebrew idioms. And so when it begins to say now, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That rest there is actually now talking about, it's an invitation again to this everlasting covenant that I want to present to you. So identifying Hebrew idioms like mercy with redemption, salvation, all these things are very important because these are code words that's in the scripture that's showing you redemption. At the death and resurrection of the Messiah, it's all about redemption. Well, we're going to have to be able to look at the key words to let you know that the Messiah is consistent, very consistent with everything that he do. But again, breaking down and looking at words from this Hebraic perspective is going to give a brighter light to the scriptures here. So again, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." That rest is Shabbat, right? This is Shabbat. This is this permanent rest that we're looking for. "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me." Learn of me, and we get into a little bit later when we get set up. That word learn, the word lamad, and how important that word is when you begin to look at the Hebrew gematria, but we get into it a little bit later because of time constraints here. But again, basically, to learn of me, for I, Yahusha, am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls. Verse 30, "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." If we was to really look at it and not bulk so much, the Torah really isn't that hard. It's teaching you basically just to love one another. That's all we have to do is just respect and love one another. Don't take anything that belongs to another brother. Don't take anything that belongs to another sister. Respect one another. Go the extra mile for one another. This is what we're going to have to do because the nation of Yashra'al in the wilderness couldn't get that thing together for 40 years. Couldn't get it right. Could not get it right. This is the reason why the Feast of Sukkot is so important, where we get the opportunity to share and have all things in common. We have Brother Yashra'al said, "Listen, you know what, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z." We have Shabbat said, "Listen, you know what, I'll go the extra mile, do X, Y, and Z." My chief elder, he said, "Listen, there's going to be some things that needs to be done because, of certain situations." Well, listen, I'll help do those things. But again, just making sure that if we work together, it'll be a whole lot easier. That's all that I'm saying. The book of Malachi, okay, 2:14. I want to also tie this in because just want to make sure that everybody is on the same page here. Everybody is to be respected, both men and women. We're going to show also how important it is for our women to be on the same page with us and understanding the covenants. The book of Malachi 2:14, it says, because there's a lot of things that was going on in the nation of Yashra'al at this time. "Yet you say, wherefore? Because Yahuwah hath been witness between you and the wife of thy youth, against whom thou hast dealt treacherously, yet is she thy companion and the wife of thy covenant. Covenants. So it is very important, all right, for us to understand that our Yashra'als are a reflection of us. And we can't deal treacherously with our wives. This is the reason why, again, ketubas are very important. Let's see if I can do this right quick. Let's see. Because we don't want anybody to feel left out. Everybody's important here, and the body must function. Okay, we have the word covenant. And we said that the word is Greek. Anybody remember what the word vow means in Hebrew? Word nadar. What about, we have talked about the word servant. Anybody remember what that word is in Hebrew? The word is abad. Another word that we had talked about before, the word will. Anybody remember what that word means in Hebrew? No problem. We have the word ras, sum. This is pronounced with an oo. Makes an oo sound. The reason why I'm bringing all of this out in the book of Malachi 2:14 is to show how important covenants are. What is a marriage? What is a ketubah? If I was to ask, what is a ketubah? What would the answer be? Let's go to sisters first, all right? Because this really protects our sisters. Because I'm reading the book of Malachi 2:14 again. If we have to cut it off at an hour, fine. That's what we have. 55, okay. Because I really need to hit this home, but we're going to have to continue on with that.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off and then I'm going to restart it.
Okay.
So we can, yeah.
So to make sure everybody understands, now Malachi 2:14, yet you say, wherefore, because Yahuwah has been witness. Yahuwah has been a witness now between you and your Yashra'al. The Yashra'al of you, against whom you have dealt treacherously. So the men were dealing treacherously now with their Yashra'als, yet is she thy companion. Meaning now is that in order for this ketubah to work, both parties must be in agreement. Because you don't want your prayers hindered. All this is talking about, again, the covenants. The covenant is a Greek. No covenant can be made without the shedding of blood. When you make a vow, the Hebrew word is nadar. Vows are everlasting. The Father himself can't even break a covenant. We talked about a servant. What is a servant? A servant dedicates his or her life to the Father of Yahuwah. The will. The Hebrew word for will is ratzon. Our desire is to do the will of the Father. Period. Do the will of the Father. And the reason why I'm saying that, the will of the Father, is because this word here, you can go back to this word ketubah, this word right here, love, which is the Hebrew word aha. And I just want to say something about that word there, aha. In relation to a covenant, a vow, being a servant, a will, and a ketubah, the word love, you see that? The word love, from a Hebraic perspective and from a Western perspective, it is not the same at all. At all. All right? I like Keith Sweat. Yeah, I love myself some Keith Sweat. sweat, you know. I'll be sure and all those guys there. So I love myself some R&B. But I have to also keep in perspective now is that that's not love according to Torah. And this what seems to be the problem that's happening in the nation of Yashra'al. If you love me, you must keep my commandments, which is the Hebrew word T-U-S, tesua, which means command or commandments, or mitzvah, commandments. So if you love me, keep my commandments. So this is now the love. Brothers and sisters should only be loving on one another according to the will of the Father, which is Torah. Any other type of love is infatuation. Is there anybody in here that to talk about those of us that are married? What type of, would you want a man that's in love with you according to the world or according to Torah? Because my argument is this. Like I tell my Isha all the time. She's not here today, but she can give witness of this. If my love for you is not according to Torah, you better hit the hills. You better hit the hills because the old me is about to come back out again. Don't trust me as far as you can throw me. But as long as I understand, okay, the covenant, the vow, being a servant, the will of the Father, understanding what is a ketubah, what is love, and what are the commandments of the Father, you're now safe because I'm now going to follow Torah. This means that I'm not going to take anything from you. I don't want another man's wife. Okay, I understand all things about community because we're looking now to build a nation, is what we're trying to do. And at some point, again, we have to learn how to love and respect one another. So the question comes back now, what does the word ketubah means? And I want, let's see, my sister here, do you have the definition for the word ketubah?
Marriage.
Right. What's that? Oh, okay, marriage, right. Very good. Sister Shemai, ketubah. Oh, yeah, I'm looking at everybody. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, promise. Very good. Promise. And so that's exactly what it is. I mean, there's no big, long definition about the word, anything like that. But the ketubah now actually protects both parties in the agreement of a marriage. So the ketubah now is just, it's a marital, agreement. And if there's no agreement, it can't be a marriage. And this marital agreement must be based upon Torah. All right, no other way. Now, let's go into this salt covenant. All right, let's go into the salt covenant. Let's go to, Ezekiel 16th chapter, verse 4, which we already read. And let's look at that word salt, which is the Hebrew word malach. The Hebrew word malach. Everybody has this? The word covenant is Greek. These are just some of the things that, the reason why I wrote this down is that I want every sister and brother to know that you have rights within side of the law. And then when you're married, you're protected under the Torah, just like Maureen had brought out to your attention that what we're trying to build here, whether a person is involved in a monogamous relationship or in a polygamous relationship, we want to set up a council, okay, where everybody now is protected. So you just can't do whatever it is that you want to do. If there's problems and issues and things like that, you must report to the council. Your business won't be spread out to everybody. But we need to know that you're protected. No man should be beating his Isha. No Isha should be disrespectful to her Ish. So when these things happen now, in the days of when we were a family, we had elders. We had officers. We was a governing body, so that anybody did anything wrong, you were held responsible for the abuse. Just like if a woman was she had committed adultery. But the thing came to pass that she did commit adultery, okay, that man was punished for that. Okay, and he couldn't put that woman away the rest of his days. So there's a very, what I'm trying to show you now that everybody's protected in this walk here. So again, what governs the body is first and foremost the Torah, the covenant, which is the shedding of blood. Again, vows, becoming a servant, doing the will of the Father, the ketubah, which is the marital agreement, love, and suah. And again, we all know who the house belongs to, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, this is the question. We're talking about a marriage. When the groom, the Messiah says, I go to prepare a place for you. So he's going to prepare a place for the bride. Right? Okay. Now, where is he going to prepare the house at?
His father's house?
In his father's house. So you're telling me now is that the groom now can't build a house outside of the father's house. Because if he was to do that now, that's confusion.
Right.
Because he says, in my father's house now there are many rooms, dimensions, or mansions. He said that. So what he's going to do now is actually build with inside of this big bed, because that's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. He's going to actually now bring the bride into this house here. Not a separate house anywhere else, but this house now, or this room that the groom is actually building, exists within inside of the Father's house. That now makes us a community. Let me get into that a little bit later on. All right. Now, I brought out the Hebrew word for salt is the word malach. It's spelled M-A-L-A-C-H. And it's the Strong's number 4414. Let's see if we can get some help here from my chief officer here. Do you have the definition for that? Okay, 4414. It's going to take some time, and what we're going to do is go at a pace where everybody is able to understand exactly what's going on. But the Hebrew language is going to be very important. It's going to be very key. The Hebrew gematria, and we are going to take it slow. There's a lot of information that I want to share. And once we begin to look at the Hebrew and the root words and the Hebrew gematria, because each character is represented by a number, it's going to give you a totally different outlook on scriptures. A totally different look. So what you're actually reading here is nice. It's good. I like that. But I can only speak for myself. The dietary law, that's fine. That's good. I like that. But there's more to the story. You know, so that's what I'm always looking into. Why the Father said, don't do this and don't do that. If I'm still teaching, if I came into Milwaukee in 1992, if I'm still saying the same thing in 2016, when I started in 1992, I'm not growing. You see what I'm saying? I already know not to mess with another man's wife. I already know that. So what's next? And why did he say that? And that's a whole other lesson, the reason why the Father says you're not supposed to deal with another man's wife. What is actually happening now when you have two germs now going inside of one woman, when you now have combating spirits inside this woman now, because every man has a spirit. Every single man has a germ. So we can get into that a little bit later, all right? So there's reasons why the Father said what he's saying. There's a reason why the Father said not to eat pork. Okay, when you begin to look at now the breakdown of hogs and swines and things like that, there's a reason why he's saying these things. He's not saying these things just to say it. Let's go into, again, the word malach in the Strong's number 4414.
It says, bring it to the root, to rub to pieces or pulverize, intrinsically to disappear as dust. Also, as a denominative, to salt, whether internally to season with salt
mentioned a little bit later today, the rubbing together with the salt offerings that the priests had to make regarding the meat sacrifices. And they have to be salted. And just like our brothers Abdelkaran and Zakaria, who was explaining to me a couple of months ago, is that when you do your meat offerings, you're not supposed to put any honey on your meats. Remember we had talked about that? So again, this is all working together as a body. I looked it up as a body, and you're absolutely correct. And we never had lamb with honey. But again, there are certain brothers who are not understanding now sacrifices or pledges to your Lord. You're not supposed to add any honey to your meat, so the salt is real important. But again, back with the lesson now, I'm going to need some help here. We're talking about now, this is the salt covenant. All this is the salt covenant. And if anything sounds confusing, please let me know. That's right, a lot. M-A-L.
And Moray,
Yes.
if it's possible, do you have a black marker up there
Black marker.
so we can get more of a bold look?
Yeah, let's see what we got here.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing that we want to talk about in regards to the salt covenant here, we're going to get a little bit more in depth with that, is it's called the Korah and the wedding ceremony. Anybody knows what the word, I don't want Korah to answer the question, but anybody know what the word Korah means? Not Korah, I don't want you to, I don't want sister Korah. And actually, to make it feminine, we can add an H at the end. Let's do that. With or without the H. Anybody know what that word means? Okay, it's a call. It means to call, or more so a called out assembly. A called out assembly. That assembly that was called out is actually the nation of Yashra'al. Let's go to the book of Joel, because this is a wedding ceremony that the father is trying to have with the bride, the nation of Yashra'al. So the Korah wedding ceremony, which is part of the salt covenant, which is part of the ketubah, is a ceremony called the Korah and the wedding ceremony, which is again where the groom now is calling out the bride to have this intimate relationship with. Right? It goes to the book of Joel. Second here. Joel 2:16. 2:16. Oh, no, there's no 2:16. We have it says, gather the people. Everybody know who these people are, right? Gather the people, set apart the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children, and those that suck. The book of Joel 2:16. And this is all going to be centered around the word Korah. And to say something at the end of the class. Wedding ceremony. So this is calling for the wedding ceremony. 2:16. Gather the people, set apart the congregation, assemble the elders, gather the children and those that suck the breast. Let the bridegroom, who's the bridegroom? Mashiach. Let the bridegroom go forth out of his chamber and the bride out of her closet. So we have these two parties now gathered together. They're being called now to a wedding ceremony. All right, a wedding ceremony. The book of Exodus 20 and 12. Exodus 20 and 12. We knocked down an hour already, huh? Oh boy, that's a long ways to go. Exodus 20 and 12. We went over this a little bit early, so I'll just do a quick recap on this. The terms and conditions where the groom comes out of his bridal chamber and the bride out of her closet, it says now is that we're supposed to honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which Yahuwah thy Elohim giveth thee. Okay, I'll just speed it up here a little bit. And, let's go to Titus, the 2nd chapter. Titus, the 2nd chapter, we read the verses 4 through 5. Titus 2 and 5. Excuse me, 2, 4 and 5. The responsibilities now. Make the younger women to be modest, to love their husbands and their children, verse 5. To be chaste and set apart, and to take good care of their households, and to be obedient to their husbands, so that no one may reproach the words of Yahuwah. Again, this is the wedding ceremony. The book of Matthew 25, verse 6. All should be, see where this is going now, because again, it's something that I'm going to ask at the end. 25 verse 6, book of Matthew. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom, which is Yahushua, who is Yahushua HaMashiach, go you out to meet him. So again, we have the word Korah, the bridegroom, is wanting now to invite the bride to a wedding ceremony. He's come out of his closet and he wants now the bride actually to meet him. Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. We'll read verse 10 and 12. This is the nation of Yashra'al. We can talk about even a literal woman. But who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. For the heart of her husband doeth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She would do him good and not evil all the days of her life. So we see now, this is talking about, again, the literal woman, but it's also talking about the nation of Yashra'al. these are the attributes that she must have in order to live inside of the house. The base. That's the Hebrew word for house. She must possess these qualities. If she don't possess these qualities, like already Eliyahu said a couple of weeks ago, if just hypothetically, this is a house. Excuse my drawing. If this is a house, you don't want to be outside of the house in the outer courts. You don't want to be there. You want to make sure that you're inside of the house in a complete alliance, follow the laws, statutes, commandments. You will always want to make sure that you're actually inside the house. Again, not outside of the house. Let's go to the last one. On the book of Ephesians, the 5th chapter. Ephesians, the 5th chapter. Verse 25. The terms and conditions of the marriage, we're talking about the responsibility of the literal male, the ish, and also the responsibility of the groom, the Messiah. Husbands, love your ishas, even as the Messiah also loved the kahal. That's another word. I'm going to have to speed up here a little bit, but I promise we'll go over these things a little bit more, because the Hebrew is a lot different than the English, all right? But again, just look these words up. Kahal, which means, in modern day terms, the church, the Korah, the called out assembly. This is what this means here. So when it talks about the church in the wilderness, it's not talking about the Baptist church. It was talking about the nation of Yashra'al. So when we begin to look at Hebrew idioms, whenever you see this word kahal, it's referring to the nation. It's referring to the nation of Yashra'al. So that's another Hebrew idiom for Yashra'al. It's actually the Hebrew word kahal. This is that called out, that Korah called out assembly. Now, we're still now with the salt covenant, which is now called a. You know what's going to happen? I'm going to actually use these things. Next time I come up to speak, because next speaker is already Eliyahu's turn to speak. He's going to speak for about 2 weeks, and then Rabbi Luffy's going to come back up again, and he's going to do his lesson. But we're talking about the salt covenant. We said the word Greek means to cut, and we have the word malak. So this is a cutting or covenant of salt. Now, here we go. The salt covenant in Torah is a covenant of loyalty. Say it again. The salt covenant, the word malak again is salt. The salt covenant is a covenant of loyalty between the groom and the bride. Okay, the groom and the bride. And the two families. Deuteronomy, the 7th chapter, verses 9 through 13. Deuteronomy 7, 9 through 13. Know therefore that Yahuwah thy Elohim, he is a mighty one, the faithful mighty one, which keepeth covenants and mercies with them that love him, and keepeth his commandments to 1,000 generations, and repayeth them that hate him to their face, to destroy them. He would not be slack to him that hated him, he will repay him to his face. So we're talking about this covenant that the groom made with the bride, and this is a covenant of salt, and a covenant of salt is a covenant of loyalty between the bride and the groom, and also the two families. Well, what does that mean? Because we're talking about community living. Community living. Anybody have a definition of community living?
Something like the same way the Qumran community, kind of like that.
Exactly. 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 Right. Something that is tight-knit, because we are talking about now that a salt covenant is a covenant of loyalty. And this word house, base, is so important. And again, this is the first letter in our Bibles here, and it means house. Now, let's show how a community works. A community works this way. Where you have a congregation or organization and everybody's trying to work to build that congregation. You have all things in common, and you're looking now to benefit or to aid in that body or congregation. Meaning now, I have a daughter, okay, but she's not in the walk. But I have a granddaughter, okay, so what would be the responsibility now is that as she's growing up, because Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, verses 4 and 9, because we read the Shabbat, it talks about now, again, community living. If you had a son, what I would then do now is say, listen, you know what? At a certain point in the relationship, I would like to introduce my granddaughter to your son. Not outside of the congregation. That's community living. What happens now is that I will look and see what is needed with inside of the body and help to assist what's going on inside of the body, not outside of the body. That's how it works. It's called community living. We have all things in common. These were the laws that was given to the nation of Yashra'al. It was so explicit with the nation of Yashra'al, even though there's 12 tribes in the nation of Yashra'al, in order to keep inheritance with this side of the family, you're not supposed to marry outside of the tribes. Not even outside of the tribes. Meaning this now, like for example, Zakane, you had 2 daughters at this present time of marital, at a marital point in their lives where they can marry. Meaning now is that you will look inside of the body and see what is needed inside of the body where your teams now will be able to assist in the body, not outside of the body. You never give your daughters to anybody outside of the body. You make sure that they stay grounded because you want to make sure that they understand the covenant. When you do that, this now protects you because now you know that she's not going to be abused. You know that now this person that she's going to marry now is going to follow all of the laws, statutes, and commandments.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's exactly why in Ecclesiasticus 7 it says, "Give her to a man of understanding,"
Exactly.
which is understanding the Torah.
All of these things here. This is how meticulous the Father is. He's not about all of these things here. You know, listen, I'm going to date him and then date him and then date him. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to find out who's the best man. And then I choose. Nah. That doesn't work. Not so. Again, the body is very important. And what we're trying to do is to outline and mimic the way that the Father had it from the very beginning. The very beginning. Because what woman would want, or what father would give his daughter, okay, to a man that doesn't possess the qualities that we talked about, understanding the vows, the commitments, the commandments, the laws, statutes, commandments. Why would you do that? Why would a sister even want to get engaged or involved with a man that's not following Torah? Right. This is your security. If we can continue on the way that we're continuing, this means now that if you're married to a man, and he's part of this congregation here, he has a responsibility to you and to the congregation. So if he's to do anything wrong to you, or vice versa, he can bring you to counsel. He said, listen, he's not doing X, Y, and Z, or she's not doing X, Y, and Z according to the Torah. This is the way that the body works. It must function that way. No other way. Unless somebody sees something different in the scripture. This This is about building a body. Building a body. All right? This is joining families together. So now, hypothetically now, if you had a son, I have a granddaughter, say, listen, you know what? Listen, the son of God, he says a whole lot of great things. I want to know now whether or not he believes that he's actually doing what he said that he's doing. Listen, I want to give my granddaughter now to your son. So what just happened now is that we just brought two families together. Because what's happening now is that when they marry, it's not just them two. You and I have now just formed a bond, and we're going to talk about now this solemn covenant that was just made. Because there's a ceremony that goes on now once the families come together. Because it is your responsibility now as the man of the house to say, listen, you know what? I come to you and say, listen, you know what? I want to bring my daughter. Or the way that it usually goes now is just the father, the son, he will go out and say, listen, you know what? I like that young girl and things like that. But within an arranged marriage now, at least you know what you're getting. You and I, we would talk. We would have the wine ceremonies. We would have a salt ceremony. This way, you and I are now bound by a contract, an agreement. All right? We're going to talk about that a little bit more. Why use salt? All right? The book of Matthew 5:13. If somebody can read that for me. All right? So while you're looking for that, again, when you're talking about building a family, a community, you are not supposed to go outside of the body. All right? This is community living, having all things in common, and this is how the love between us continues to grow because we now have something in common. Okay, book of Matthew 5:13, Hebrew idioms.
You are the salt of the earth.
So you are the salt of the earth. So who is the you? Okay, so the word salt is also attributed now to the nation of Yashra'al. Yashra'al is considered salt. Okay?
But if the salt has lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salt?
Right, and so we also see that the word salt is associated with the word Torah. So if Israel has lost her Savior, that means that she has lost the Torah. And if she has lost the Torah, what's going to happen now to everything else? All right, it's going to fall apart. Now, the importance of salt. Salt keeps the body from deteriorating. All right? Our sweat glands contain salt. Our tears contain salt. Salt is so important. Okay? And I know our dietitian, okay, Yashra'al, because he always, we have to date on the latest diet. So that's not good to eat. All right? So, salt is so important in the diet. Again, the body contains salt. It keeps the body from deteriorating. Our sweat glands contain salt. Our tears contain salt. And this word right here was very, very important. It's zarah, which is seed, sperm, semen. All right. This is one of the qualities, along with the Yashra'al genetic material, that produces offspring. But even a zarah, the sperm cell, the semen contains salt. The fluids from a woman's reproductive organs contain salt. You must have a certain amount of salt in your diet per day. If not, you will have major complications. All right, major complications. This salt. Salt is so important where there was a time when people were actually paid with salt. Salt was very, very expensive. So for a day's work, people would get paid using salt. In ancient times, when two people wanted to enter into a covenant of loyalty, all right, a covenant of loyalty now, they will recite the details of the covenant. And again, I'm going to give now my granddaughter to your daughter, all right? This is what's needed in the body to keep the body functioning. Because every man now wants to continue. That's Torah. Everybody knows that, right? Every man must continue. Because from Genesis to Revelation is talking about the Hebrew word dor, which means generation, and it's talking about this man got this seed and 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 this seed. If the seed stops, then you can't continue. And Abraham was told now to measure, to count the number of Yashra'al. If you can measure the stars, he can actually number the children of Israel. But again, reproduction must continue. So this is the reason why. If I have a granddaughter, your seed must continue. That's just the scripture. We're going to get into that a little bit later, all right? Because it gets to be a little bit complicated. But again, this is what's needed in the body. But again, in ancient times, when two people wanted to enter into a covenant of loyalty, we would discuss the terms of the contract and the ketubah. This is a covenant of loyalty. We will recite the details of the covenant, exchanging salt from one pouch to the other. You will have a pouch of salt, I will have a pouch of salt. All right? Then we will shake the pouches. This is the custom. All right? This is just a custom. And then what would happen now is that I would take my pouch of salt, okay, and then put it into your bag of salt. Meaning, the only way that this covenant can be broken between you and me, or this marriage covenant between you and your Isha, you would have to now take each and every salt grain that you put in her pouch and say, listen, I've gotten all of my salt back, you got your salt, I got my salt, and go your own separate ways. And that's impossible. Impossible. This is a covenant of salt. So when the groom found the bride, in Ezekiel the 16th chapter, it said that she was not salted at all. She was not in a covenant agreement with anybody. She wasn't even following the law, statutes, and commandments that was given to Abraham through Isaac to Jacob. She wasn't even doing that. I found her in her filth. And when I saw her in her filth, I said, Chaya, which is another word that I brought out before. You can spell it like this. This is more German, but you would do it this way, Chaya, which is more Hebraic, which means live. So with all of that was going on, when the groom found the bride in Ezekiel the 16th chapter, in her filth, he said, live, because she was not even salted or swaddled at all. I want to enter now into a perpetual covenant with you, is what I want you to do. This is what the groom is asking you to do. A perpetual covenant. All right. We talked about what is ketubah. It's complete marital obedience. Now, how does a basic ketubah look like? All right. This is all about the salt covenant. And what happens? Bringing the families together. What is needed in the body? What is lacking? And how can I now assist in building and keeping the body flowing? For the groom, the word vow is nadir, and basically, for the most part, this is how a ketubah must look like or sound like in some ways, somewhere like this. I vow, this is what the groom says to the Isha, I vow to love you as my Isha or wife, even as Yahuwah sending his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, who also loved the Kahal, which is the church of assembly, to lay down his life for you. So what the groom actually does for his Isha is that he lays down his life for you. This is his responsibility in order to marry. If he can't do that, he's not marital or marriageable. He doesn't have those qualities because it takes total dedication. And I'm saying that now based upon how the groom acted towards the bride. But he can only sacrifice himself for you if he has to be following Torah. No brother should be laying his life and going to bat with any woman who is not following Torah. Don't do it. You're going to find yourself in a little bit of trouble. Okay? And I'm going to also say some things regarding the male, what the woman should also be doing, because this thing works both ways. I'm going to go ahead. He promised to lay down his life for you and to wash you with the living word, which is Torah. So that's his responsibility. If this man can't teach you Torah and how to conduct yourself according to the Bible, he's no good for you. All right, because I'm going to say this because it's not just a great thing, all right? Unless there's something physically wrong with you, anybody can have intercourse, all right? Anybody can sing the ooh-ah sound for about 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever your stamina is like, all right? Well, my argument is going to be this. What can you do after that? You know, what else can you do? Because anybody can do that. You know, listen, the lights need to be kept on, all right? We need a roof over our head, food and refrigerator, the car needs gas, insurance. What else can you do? Okay, because one of the main responsibilities that each has now, he acts as a provider. Just as the groom, the Messiah, the Mashiach, he was a provider. This is the reason why he said, I go to build a house for you. But he's not going to build a house for a rebellious woman. She must follow Torah. So again, the responsibility of the male now is to teach the woman the Torah. And he vows to love you as he loves his own body and to nourish and cherish you even as Yahuwah does the church or the congregation of the Kahal. He promised to dwell with you according to knowledge, giving honor to you as the weaker vessel, and living together, watch this now, living together with you as heirs together in Torah. Heirs together. Is there any married couple in here who don't want to make it to the kingdom together? So the reason why you're with your Ishas is because you love them. And you want to work together, keep shalom in the house, so that when you pray, your prayers won't be hindered. But if you have another agenda, there's something else that you want to do outside of Torah, your prayers will be hindered. Your prayers will be hindered. Just like we see what happened in the Garden of Eden. You see the situation now where we had Kawua or Eve now. She had her own agenda, and being that she had her own agenda, the man wasn't able to stand up and be the responsible person that he needed to be. So after the whole transaction took place, being that the man is the head of the household, who did the father come to first? Right, exactly. So she had to do what she needed to do. But nothing happened until Adam or Adam got out of sync. So I'm just trying to show now the responsibility of the groom now, because whatever vow that an Isha makes, you as the groom, you have the ability now to disannul any vow that she makes. That's the authority that was given to you because you're now the provider. The Father gave you that authority. But we use it now according to knowledge, all right, giving respect and honor to the weaker vessel because you want now your prayers to be answered and you want this continuation or this relationship now with the Father. You want that. I'm going to read on. The groom now agrees, I will fight in righteousness, and again, that's the operative word now, Sadiq. I will fight in righteousness for you, our children, okay, and for our household. And my perfect example is this. I like using examples. We went out to get immersed, okay, and, I keep forgetting my sister's name, Kasai, all right? We was about to get immersed. Zacchaeus was already in the water. And she was a little hesitant about getting in the water. Zacchaeus said, baby, I got you. He said, I got you. So we now have a situation now where Zacchaeus now, being the provider, he's the groom. So now he's protecting the household. So what he's trying to do now is comfort her in the word, showing her the importance of a mikvah. Baby, I got you. Even with Quran, when you got into the water, I seen him hold your hand and help you into the water and try to comfort and make sure that everything's okay with you as you did your immersion. And also with Sister Shemai. So again, I'm watching everything. I'm watching everything. So again, I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understands the responsibility of the groom. Now, The responsibility now of the bride. Her ketubah or her agreement should be like this. I make my vow to you, which is a each, to be your loyal wife and to submit myself under your headship. Just as the Messiah is subjected, just as the bride is subjected or in subjection to Hamashiach. Now, I will live first into Yahuwah, our Elohim. So again, the woman now is going to live for the Messiah first. And while doing that, she's being in subjection to her groom. Sisters, don't be doing a whole lot of crazy stuff, okay? Make sure that your ish is also following Torah. That's your responsibility. Listen, I see what you're saying. You want to move a half a gram across seas. That's not Torah. Because, baby, listen, I'm your head. You have to do whatever it is that I say. And if you're not, you've been in disobedience. And so what I'm going to have to do now is give you a bill of divorce. Now, don't do anything illegal for your ish there. Make sure that he's also following Torah, and that both of you together are working together. Because remember when Warren Lamanya, who showed the full example of a marriage,
right,
where a woman, she's standing this way and the man is standing that way, so that way everybody's watching everybody's back. Right. So this is supposed to how it works in Hebrew culture. You know what? You are representative of Yekezikiel, in the image of you're working together with the Isha. You got each other's back. That's how it works. Yes.
I don't want to go off topic.
No.
This is my first time here, so I'm trying to get understanding.
Sure.
What you're supposed to believe in. We all believe that other nations can be saved, like
yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's documented. When we look at, we had talked about this before. We can go to a little bit later. Maybe after I'm done. Maybe Moreh Eliyahu can go into it because the scriptures talk about in the 7th month and the 15th day. They talked about animal sacrifices. They talked about from the 15th to the 21st, 70 bulls were supposed to be slaughtered during that time. And it talks about that those 70 bulls represents the other nations. Well, let's just get one scripture for you right quick. And then from there, we have Moreh Eliyahu will bring something up after the class is over. Let's go to the book of Yekeziel. You can go to the book of Ezekiel, the 47th chapter, verse 21 to 23. Because what we do here is that we talk about our first fruits. In Israel, this is called first fruits, or bikurim, or bikor. And then after that, the other nation would be like the remnants. But the Father's always calling the nation of Yashra'al bikor or bikurim, which means first fruits, or resh, which means head. So if you can read Ezekiel, the 27th chapter, verses 21 to 23, you tell me what you gather from that. Yeah, 47, 21, 23. Excuse me, 47. Yeah, Ezekiel.
in the east is right.
Yeah, 47. Ezekiel, the 47th chapter. I got that right? 47?
Yes.
47, 21 to 23.
So shall you divide this land unto you according to the tribes of Israel.
So first things first, the tribes, the nation of Israel was given land. Okay, go ahead.
And it shall come to pass that ye shall divide it by lot for inheritance unto you. And to the strangers that sojourn among you, which shall get children among you, and they shall give to you as born into the country among the children of Israel. They shall have inheritance to you among the tribes of Israel, and it shall come to pass that in what tribe the strangers sojourn, there shall ye give him his inheritance, saith the Lord God.
Right. Okay. So without going into any, that's pretty self-explanatory. But there's a ton of scriptures regarding the other nations. And we can get into that again a little bit later. But again, back to the bride now, and as far as her commitment to the groom. Speed it up here a little bit. She says, I will make my vow to you and to be your loyal wife and to submit myself under your headship, just as the church is subject to Yashra'al Mashiach. Isha says, I will live first into Yahuwah Elohim, then to you, the groom, loving you, caring for you, obeying you, and ever seeking to please you as my earthly sovereign. Okay? Caring for you in love and Torah, that your heart may always trust in me. Anybody know why I said that the woman is saying now here in this ketubah here that I just wrote out, and that she's supposed to be ever seeking to please her each as her earthly sovereign? The reason why I say that is because what did the scriptures tell us about Sarah in regards to Abraham?
God the Lord.
Right. As long as you say you are the daughters of Sarah, as long or as, but you have to do well. You have to do the Torah. That's the only way you can consider yourself a daughter of Sarah, if you're doing the Torah. Because a lot of people want that claim. That's a real big title. Those are real big shoes to fill. To call yourself a daughter of Sarah, wow. You're way up there now. Just the way that the Pharisees, they didn't qualify of being called the sons of Abraham. You have your father's the devil. Is who you are. Because when I look at the works of Abraham, if you have believed Abraham, you will believe me.
That's right. That's right.
All right, so again, these titles are very, very important. So again, your heart may always trust in me, delighting in bearing your children, teaching them the ultimate commandments of Yahuwah. Where you might go, I will go. Your family will be my family, trusting in you always in Torah. Now, the scriptures that support every single thing that I said now, you can write them down. I'm not going to read them because we're really pressing for time. 1 Timothy 5 and 8 is going to prove every single thing that I said in regard to the ketubah between the man and the wife. 1 Timothy 5 and 8. Ephesians, the 5th chapter, verses 25, 26. 1 Corinthians 7 and 4. 1 Peter 3 and 7. Proverbs 5:18. Nehemiah 4:14. The book of Ruth, the 1st chapter, verse 17, verses 16 and 17. Hosea, the 2nd chapter, verses 19 to 20. 1 Peter 3 and 6. Titus 2 and 5. Proverbs 31 and 11. Psalms 128, verse 3. Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter, verses 6 through 7. Deuteronomy, the 11th chapter, verse 19. Now, the reason why I gave these scriptures, when you get time, you look over them, because the scriptures that I gave you protects both parties. That's what it does. It protects both parties, all right? Now, the next thing that we're going to do, because we're not going to technically end the class now, but there's something that I need to get done. So what I'm going to need for everybody to do now is to stand up and face the east again. I'm going to blow the shofar 7 times, and we're going to get another sister to pray, and then I'm going to explain to everybody why I have particular sisters praying. All right? So we're going to stand up and face the east, we're going to blow the shofar again 7 times, and we're going to have that magic sister that's going to complete we're going to finish it off, all right? Then I'm going to explain to everybody what I'm actually doing here. standing facing the east. And with the permission of the head of the household, as I came, I'm going to ask for Sister Shemai, okay, to end this with prayer.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, power, and the glory forever. Hallelujah, Lord.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Lord.
Now, we can all be seated. Now, I'm going to bring the cat out of the bag. Aisha said, you always got something going on. I know, I mean, there's always something hidden behind what you know. And no sister asked me anything, okay, when I started to do this. I'll show you what happened. Is about 3 weeks ago, Aisha wasn't here, so we went through like a little chain of command, where we had Sister Shia to come up and she made a prayer, okay? And that surprised me. Okay, that surprised her. So we had the first sister here that actually did the prayer here was our Sister Farah. She made a prayer. Then at the end, Sister Shia, she made a prayer. I told you and I, we spoke on the phone. I said, listen, make sure that Aisha prays before the class starts. And to show you how the Ruach is working, this wasn't rehearsed. I asked Ezekiel. I said, listen, he told me that his Isha actually prayed, okay, at the end of his service. Then we had, okay, my sister here, Shoshana, she prayed, okay, and then we had Sister Shemai, she prayed. And everybody that prayed, you said something. Every sister that prayed is that you used the word, right out or inadvertently, the word, which means Father. If we would have read the prayer that Sister Shemai did in Hebrew, she said, Abinu, which means our Father. Every sister that got up and prayed, she used the words Father, our Father. She used the word Yahuwah and Yahusha. Each one of these women now, they're under coverings. So when you got up and you made these prayers, what you actually did is that you kind of made the ultimate vow. Okay, is what you did. You are bound by a real heavy contract now. And we've been talking about contracts for the longest. What you just did now is that you perform what we call, it's called go back and check that word again. It's called Abidah, excuse me. Abidah. This type of prayer or worship is what actually Ezekiel done last week. And him and I didn't talk about anything. Whenever you use the Father's name in the prayer, we have to know that there's something that you have to give in return. Because, see, the Father is not a genie. You just can't rub the lamp and just ask for things and not expect that there's something that you have to also do in return. What you just did again is you made the ultimate prayer, because I did a show years ago on YouTube where I talked about the 3 times that we used to pray, morning, evening, and morning, afternoon and evening prayers. And we know that when Daniel was in captivity under the Babylonians, being that he wasn't able to actually do the sacrifices, is that he actually made his sacrifices through prayer. What I'm saying now is that you are so totally committed now to Torah where there's nothing you can do. You just committed yourselves to Torah completely. And we have witnesses here that you did it. Now, I didn't know I did that. But what happened now was that I know for a fact that Yashra'al has prayed in the congregation, so he's actually made the same commitment. Mori Eliyahu has done it. Zachar Yahu has prayed on here. Of course, Ezekiel, we have Zakain has done it. There's another brother here that also prayed. Oh, Shaul has also prayed here. And so this thing is so, this type of prayer in which you've actually done is so intense, where even last night, briefly, Shaul and I went over something very important about community living. And we had talked about, just briefly, we had talked about this word servant, the word servant, and what the people word for servant again is abad. And what a servant actually does now is that they give, or he or she gives his life for the sheep. And this is what you're saying that you would actually do. That your first and foremost attention now is going to be towards working towards the body, being a servant, and making sure that the body continues in one accord. So it's not a trick, because what has happened now was that you've all prayed before. So how long have you been in the walk? Over 5-6 years, and Sister Shia? Yeah, like 13 years. So you're not novices to this. So with you making these prayers, I mean, it shouldn't come as this big shock where you didn't know that this was a walk of commitment. And like, how long have you been in the walk? Like 23 years. And Shemai, like she had said before, it was kind of funny when we was back at the original spot. But yeah, I just kind of like woke up this way. You know, we didn't know anything else but Israel. And so I'm just trying to show you here that this is a walk of commitment, aiding and benefiting the body, and making sure that the body functions. The bickering, the arguing, the hatred, and all these other things, it can't fluctuate, or it's not beneficial to the body. And if each one of these sisters made a covenant with your Lord, and they're now responsible. You know, so again, exactly. So you're happy that you made this ultimate commitment where everybody in the congregation knows. So we know now for a fact that your sole purpose now is for the benefit of the Father of Yahuwah, benefiting the congregation and making sure that everything runs smoothly. All right.